So you got yourself one of these lovely Umarex G3s by WE. You want to take it out and you have a good time, as obviously everyone does. But you've either been bitten by or you've heard the reputation of WE to have their internals made out of the finest chocolate, as you can see by this hammer here. What it's supposed to look for reference. And you decide you're not going to deal with that because you don't want to damage your gun, because failure of components always leads to the potential of damage. So you go out and get yourself a set of Z steel, or Z steel if you're American, complete trigger set. This is a proper steel upgrade for the entire trigger group of anything that is percussive, and is what I describe as essential upgrades. Now, this rifle has operated on that, so I know this kit works fine. However, for demonstration purposes today, I have put the original, or close to the original parts back in. So this starts as you would do with a field strip. Pins out. Stock off. Now, you don't need to take the bolt out. You take this pin out here and put it somewhere safe. And because this has a tendency to want to wander, consider removing it now so you can keep it safe. And we can put this aside. Next, you got yourself your fancy little HK approved trigger group. Some of these components are in fact compatible with the real steel. To disassemble this, you need to start by setting it to single fire, and then this pin here, if I angle that, this moves backwards and forwards. You push it forwards and then push the safety lever just out the side, like that. The first time you remove the trigger group, it might be a little bit stiff, but the fundamental is you push up to remove the entire trigger assembly. Now, you don't need this. Put that aside somewhere safe. The steel trigger replacement is a hammer and arm, firing pin, assembly, and sear. Each of these is relatively easy to replace once you know how to do it, so we'll run through that. The hammer is the easiest part to remove. All you need to do is wiggle it around a little bit and the pin will just fall out. And if it doesn't, little pressure doesn't hurt. That's the, well, that's a upgraded hammer, but with an original spec arm on it. We can put that aside. We don't want to replace each of an individual part. The entire reassembly process is much easier if you replace all the parts at the same time. To get access to the trigger, which is where this little component lives, we need to remove your trigger staging arm. Just this little pin here, pushes out, nice and easy. And then that drops out the bottom. To remove the trigger, push this pin here. It's under a little bit of tension, but it will come free with some persuasion. Don't want to grip too tight, just enough to be able to then, to further disassemble, you may notice there is a spring cord over this space here. This holds the spring in place during normal operation. The quickest and easiest way to remove that is to, with a flathead screwdriver, gently pull it aside, and there you go. It's flipped itself free. From there you just manipulate the trigger out the bottom and keep it with the spring. And then finally the firing pin. This is where you require a small screwdriver, such as a glasses or other jeweler's screwdriver, a little Phillips head. Off comes your gas mag stoppage lever. You need to retain the screw. Don't need to retain that. Then you'll need some fine pliers. Push the firing pin forward until this pin is in line with its hole. In fact, we'll zoom in slightly, there we go. Push that until it's in line with its hole, and then shouldn't take much pressure to just pull the pin free, again retaining that, and out comes the firing pin assembly. Retain the springs, push out this little retaining pin, and thus the firing pin can go back into the spares bag. To reassemble, got your steel firing pin housing. Spring didn't come free. Your firing pin housing. The short spring goes into this little hole at the top of this gap here. There you go, that little hole here, with this tension pin. After that, the actual firing pin itself goes in. Just a little bit of adjustment and in goes your pin. And it should be able to rotate freely. Next goes this long spring in the bottom hole. Oh my. And we can return this assembly to the fire control group. The steel firing pin is a little bit of a tighter fit, so it might require a little bit more manipulation. Once it's in, using your hand to push this lever up. Complication right off the bat, the bottom spring has rotated. That's why you do everything gently. So slide that firing pin in ever so gently. There we go. Full motion. Again, using the fat of your hand to push that down, this lever down. You can then push this pin back in and make sure it is fully in and the pin is able to be caught by the lever and retract. After that, your hold open on empty lever goes over the top with this little pin going in on the underside of the ridge in there. So that way, when you put the screw back in, I'm not anxious about filming a video, you're anxious about filming a video. There you go. So when the magazine is empty, it pushes the firing pin up, preventing continuation of dry fire. Nearly there now. The hard part, this brass pin comes out, your sear comes off. Now, you might notice this steel one has a springed pin in there, and this one does not. This is because once this pin went in, it decided it was never coming out again. So for the demonstration purposes, you need to remove the pin from there, the spring and this tensioning pin will come out, put them back in, and carefully reassemble so that you're not crushing the spring in there. And then it's a matter of reversing the steps from earlier. If it decides it's not going to reassemble easily because of the pin in there, you can use a little bit of external tension on it to allow it to slide in nicely. Next comes the spring and putting the trigger back in. What I do is I put the spring back in so it is sat nicely in this guiding spot. Slide it in. A little bit of fiddling. Little bit of widdly waddly, fiddly widdly. Pardon my inexcusable nonsense. There we go. Then once it's back in line here, slide the pin back in. Now for this spring, make sure it returns back to its original location. Like that. Next you want to put the stage selector arm back in. Again, nice and easy. Make sure this roller is on and hasn't gone walkabouts, because it would like to go for a walkabout, and we should have that back to full functionality. And then the last bit of nuance to the assembly, you get your original spring back on. Pull it back so the end of the rod is available to just slide in through this hole here. As you can see, if you don't hold it all the way through, it becomes a nightmare to manage. And then you just slide this back in until one complication that can occur, this may fall out of place. So slide your spring back, hold that pin forwards, in through that hole at the back, slide it in and slide it down until it is in the right place, this hole here. And get your pin, slide that back in with a little bit of wiggling to get it in the right place, and we have assembled it wrong. So a little troubleshooting. I did not maintain the correct location of this little lever. There we go. Come on, you wee bastard. Get back in. There we go. So, trigger test. I'd call that working. I don't know about you. And now the last step to reassemble by undertaking everything so far we've done in reverse. Tap that back in, push that little arm forwards. This wants to line up there, and slide it back in, and there we go. And the last step, reassemble your rifle while the cat harasses you. Just going to put the magazine paddle back on. Pin back in. bolt to the rear, stock back in, and then reward yourself with a happy little HK slap. And enjoy shooting for a long time to come.